Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Matsamo nasti papatma, naparadhi cha kaschana, parihare pilajjame kimbruve purushottama. Bhumau skalitapadanam, bhumireva avalambanam, tvai jata paradhana, mameva sharanam prabhu. Govinda vallabhe radhe, prarthaye tvamaham sada, tadiyam iti janatu, govindo mam tvaya saha. Radha Aradhita Radhesha Radhika Pranavallabha Radha Ramana Vande Tvam Radhika Prema Nirjita Prachoditaye Napura Saraswati Vitanvata Jasya Satim Sitin Hadi Salakshana Pradarabhut Khilasyataha Same Rishinam Rishabha Prasitatam. Hare Krishna. I welcome Ankur, Mukta Mataji, Venkatesh, Srina, Akshay. Thank you for joining. And I would deeply express my gratitude to Krishnani Mataji for being here. Thank you. So today we'll be doing the 15th chapter. And I believe that we have 15th, we have 16th, 17th. We have 2 sessions for the 18th chapter. And then we have exam sometime in mid or end January. That is the kind of time frame that we are looking for. Priyanka Mataji, thank you very much for joining. Hare Krishna. And Amit Pro, thank you also for joining. So that is the schedule, just as I was mentioning. We will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more classes which cover the remaining chapters, and we take the exam in the mid or the last week of January. The exam, for those who are unfamiliar, is that we will be having essays, we'll be having fill in the blanks, we'll be having multiple choice. It's the usual thing, there is no specific change. We'll take more on the, if you have more questions, then you can please write them down and we can take the questions about the exam a little later towards the end. We can get started with the 15th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita. Rohini, can you please also be the moderator today?
Hi Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanyavad Prana. Yes, no. Yes Prabhuji, I can.
Thank you. So please, those who want to read the essays, please do put them in the chat and you'll be called. Rohini will start and then we can we can get going. So Rohini, well, let's start you and me. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Shri Bhagavanu Vacha
Urdhvamula Madhashakam
Urdhvamula Madhashakam
Ashvattam Prahuravyayam
Ashvattam Prahuravyayam
Chandamsi Yasya Parnani
Chandamsi Yasya Karnani
Yastam Veda Savedaved.
Yastam Veda Savedaved. Translation: The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas."
Thank you. Just you can do the purport and the first paragraph, please, Rohini.
purport.
Yeah, the
After,
first paragraph of the purport, please.
After the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas.
Thank you. So, in the link between the 14th chapter and the 15th chapter is Arjuna asks Krishna about the qualities or the characteristics of the person who has transcended the modes of material nature. Or rather, the question he asks is how to transcend the modes of material nature. And Krishna answers in the 14th chapter, Mam chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samatityetan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. While the influence of the modes of material nature on the jiva has been very elaborately discussed in the 14th chapter, the micro picture was there, but the macro picture or the big picture was missing. And also, what about the Vedas? And where is the link to the Vedas in all these is mentioned. So the 15th chapter begins with that. Krishna gives this material creation or the material world the big picture about it in the first few verses. And then also he gives how the jivas transmigrate from one body to another. And then also what is the link between jivas and Krishna, and how Krishna is actually maintaining the jivas and how he's supporting them in many different ways. And towards the very end, we get the truth that about how the Vedas are just but a way or a means to know about Krishna. And those who know Krishna have already known or understood the Vedas. So that is the overall theme, arching theme of this. And then Rohini, just do the paragraph beginning with the process of extrication, please. That particular paragraph.
The process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up to the 13th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entities, activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation.
Thank you. So Krishna is giving this particular analogy to the material creation, and he says that this is like a banyan tree. And if you can see or visualize the banyan tree, in India, we can see that there is a particular tree, and then it expands, and the branches will bring down roots, and then they start another tree. And there are, please, somebody can chime in. I think there is the biggest banyan tree is in Calcutta, or you have to tell me, somebody has to tell me, but they cover many areas, many acres of land. And if you go and ask and stand in the middle of that banyan tree and say, which was the original tree from which this came about, it's impossible to know. And Krishna is making the analogy of the banyan tree. as a comparison to this material world. All right, Rohini, so your second verse and your roll call, please.
Next is Amit Prabhu, and then Timir Prabhu, and then Ishwari Radha Mataji.
Amit Prabhu, thank you for joining.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Let's do the second verse together. Adaschodvam prashritastasya shakha
Adashchodam prashtastasya shakha
guna pravruddha vishaya pravala
guna pravadha vishaya pravala
adascha mulyan anushantatani
adascha mulyananushantatani
karmanu bandhini manushya loke.
karmana bandhina manushya loke. The branches of this tree extend downwards and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of the human society.
Thank you. Amit Prabhu, please do the purport. It's a small purport, but
Sure.
elaborate. Thank you.
Sure. The description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches spread in all the direction. In the lower part, these are these are variegated manifestation of living entities. Human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower part of the branches, whereas the upper parts are higher forms of living entities, the demigods, the Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As a tree is nourished by the water, so this tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. Sometimes we find that a tract of a land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes a tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionally greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense object. By the development of the different modes of the nature, we develop different senses, and by the senses, we enjoy different varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses, the ear, nose, eyes, etc., which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. The twigs are sound, form, touch, and so on, the sense objects. The subsidiary root are attachment and aversions, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering and sense enjoyment. The tendency towards piety and impiety are considered to be developed from these secondary roots, which spread in all direction. The real root is the Brahmaloka. The other roots are in the human planetary system. After one enjoys the results of virtuous activities in upper planetary system, he comes down to the earth and renews his karma or fruitive activities for promotion. This planet of human being is considered the field of activities.
Thank you so much, Amit Prabhu. So we can see how this, the various, even for a particular tree, every aspect of the tree has some particular activity. And in the same way, we can see about how the material existence, which is compared to the banyan tree or the material manifestation, also has like the different parts of the tree, and you get the same kind of extension of what it is. So for example, the tips of the branches are the senses, the ears, nose, eyes, etc., which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. If you can see, if I need to enjoy something, then I should have the sense, and also I should have the sense object for me to enjoy. If there is two radios, then the frequency has to match the radios. My eyes will not want to taste anything because eyes want to see. So the same way, the sense object for the eyes is the vision or the seeing of the different objects. So you can see how intricate Krishna is. Just this material nature is impossible to understand, but Krishna is giving of how complicated and enmeshed is the existence of the living entity. And he gives in next two more verses, he gives the nature of material existence, and then he says how to get out of it, how to get out of this very intricate material existence. Thank you. Ishwari Radhamati, who is next?
Timir Prabhu.
Timir Prabhu, thank you. Narupamasyeha tathopalabhyate
Narupamasyeha tatopalabhyate
nanto na chadir na cha sampratishta
nanto na chadir na cha sampratishtha
ashvattamenam subirudhamulam
ashvattamenam suvirudhamulam
asanga shastrena dridena chitva
asanga shastrena dridhena chitva
tatah padam tat parimargitavyam
tatah padam tat parimargitavyam
yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuyah
yasmin gatana nivartanti bhuyaha
tameva chadyam purusham prapadye
tam eva chadyam purusham prapadye
yata pravritti prashruta purani.
yatah pravritti prashrita purani. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial.
Thank you. And Srila Prabhupada actually mentions in the second paragraph of the purport about the Sangha and Asanga. The word Asanga is very important in this connection because attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of the spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures. So, when Krishna gives this, when he says in the Bhagavad-Gita, in the 7th chapter, he says, Daivi Esha Gunamai, sorry, what is that? Daivi Esha Gunamai, yeah, correct. Daivi Esha Gunamai, Mama Maya Duratyaya, Mam Evaye Prapadyante, Maya Metam Tarantite. When he says that this material nature of mine is very difficult to overcome, now Krishna is giving details of what it means to be involved or entangled in this material existence and how one can get out of it. In one sense, he's using the word asanga, which means detachment. But in the modern context, it's much easier to get attachment by Krishna's mercy. That is, much effective to get attachment to Krishna, and thereby the lower things actually become kind of insignificant. And it takes time because this material nature is seriously binding and it's very, very powerful. You just cannot have like a light switch. Okay, Krishna, enough of material world. I'll turn on the light switch and I'll go to spiritual world. It doesn't. Krishna is saying this is a very, very binding place, and Krishna is mentioning that one should take shelter of devotees and try to practice devotional service. And it's so easy to cut this knot of material existence. And the knot of material existence is the karmic reactions that bind the person. In the Chaurashtaka, it is mentioned, in one of the phrases, it is mentioned, Yadiya nama pi haratyasesham Giri prasarannapi paparashim Ascharya rupo nanu chorayedre Ishta shrito vanamaya kadachin. So that's the famous Rajay Prasiddham song. In that it is mentioned, Yadiya namapi haratya sesham. Merely by uttering one name of Krishna, harati means to destroy. Asesham is unlimited. Giri prasaran apipaparasham. The sins which are like big, gigantic mountains are just utterly destroyed by mere chanting of his name. And it is said that you have never seen such a thief like this who can just take away, actually, if you have a thief and if you hear of a thief, the thief actually, that thief is a very, very devious, cunning, and a very expert thief. He or she has to come to your home to take away the stuff. But what sort of thief is this, that merely by uttering the name of him once, mountains and mountains of sins are destroyed? And it's a very, if time permits, we'll sing that bhajan today. It is, anyways, in any case. So the next verse, please.
Prabhu, there's a question.
Yes. Would you hold on to the question? Kanegopal Prabhu, right?
Yes, Prabhu.
Kanegopal Prabhu, just hold on for like few minutes. Let's do like 3 or 4 more verses, and then I'll happily serve you.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
No, thank you. Who's next? Lauren?
Ishwari Radhamati.
Yes, from Florida.
Haribol.
Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha
Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha
adhyatma nitya vinivritta kama
adhyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha
dvandvair vimukta sukha dukkha samgnir
dvandvair vimukta sukha dukkha samagnir
gacchantya padam avyayam tat.
gachanti amudha padam avyayam tata. Translation. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Mate, actually, please read till I say pride is due to illusion, and complete that sentence. So I'll say when to stop. So
Okay.
Yeah.
Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
yeah.
The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride, because the conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the Lord of material nature. It is very difficult for him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he is not Lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. Keep going, Prabhu.
Yeah. One has to get out of this false notion. You can stop there.
Okay. He thus makes all things complicated, and he is always in trouble. The whole world moves under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they have divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world.
Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. This is amazing. And Srila Prabhupada is kind of spot on. I'll give one example. and then we can get started from there. You know what? Who can I kind of volunteer to kind of pick up on? You know what? Okay, Mrigakshi Mataji, thank you. So Mrigakshi Mataji and her family, they go to a beautiful resort, whatever place, Mataji. I'll just speak on her behalf of Hawaii. I have no attachment to Hawaii, nor am I a salesman for Hawaii tourism asking everybody to go to Hawaii. I'm just picking up a random place. So she goes to that wonderful place with her husband and with her children. And then as soon as she goes, she tells her husband, sorry, we need to go to the hardware store. Her husband asks, why? Well, her husband also feels the same way. He says, why? I don't like the color of the hotel room. We need to go and get some paint and start changing the color. And sorry, the furniture is pretty terrible here. Let's go to the hardware store or the furniture store. We'll get some furniture. And then you can see that the hotel manager is getting concerned by all the activities that are going on in the hotel, because you go there, nobody does that. You go there, you just do your business and go out. And same way, Krishna is saying that this material world is like the hotel that we kind of stay for some time. So having said that, we do what we need to do. Oftentimes Krishna says that we shouldn't have pride, doesn't mean we shouldn't have confidence. There are two different things. Pride means that I am the doer and I am the enjoyer and the controller. Krishna is saying that if you have that mentality, then you cannot get out. But having said that, you still go, like, Mrigakshi Mataji will go, but, they go to the Hawaii resort, they do their, whatever activities they thought about, visiting this place, that place, visiting temple, doing all the activities, you come back. It doesn't mean that, oh my God, we are away from home. This is not our home. This is our hotel room. We shouldn't. No, you're not like that either. You have the thing that, okay, this is not my place. I've come here, I do my business and go. And that's how the material world is. We have the confidence because we are connected to Krishna. And the pride we have is pride because we are connected to Krishna, and not the pride that I am the doer. There is that kind of difference. Because if you don't have that, then you will not have that that determination to pull through. Oh my God, Krishna is there not helping me. He's helping you, but you don't know that. He's not there helping me. This material world, I am not the doer. You will get a little, it just, the whole thing becomes little unhealthy, to say the least, in terms of our outlook. So our pride is there because Prahlad Maharaj had pride. Imagine you are the 5-year-old boy and you are dependent on your parents. And your parent, unfortunately, is the controller of the entire universe. And you have to stand up to that particular person. If you don't have that pride or faith or confidence in Krishna, you will never do that. You will just cave into the fact, Hiranyakashipu says, hey, chant my name. And Prahlad will say, yes, my Lord, I'll chant your name. There is no Vishnu. Because you don't have that confidence or pride. The whole idea is that he was confident or taking pride in Krishna's protection, not saying that. Is that a fair thing? Because the devotees always have this thing. How do we deal with that? That's one point. The other particular point I wanted to mention was that that is one example I wanted to give. I wanted to give one more example, but it skips out of my mind. I'll come back to it later. But can I go, Prabhu, please ask a question?
Prabhu, in verse 3-4, so Krishna is saying the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. And no one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But just like in the previous chapters, Krishna has already declared that he is the source of all the material and spiritual universes. So I'm just like wondering why Krishna is saying that nobody can know where its foundation is.
Thank you. He is giving in terms of the perspective of the jiva, because it is the jiva that Krishna is saying you should get out of this material world and come back to me. He's saying internally, if you try to stay here and try to find where the source is, it would be impossible for you. Just like Brahma, he came from the Garbhodakshai Vishnu's lotus and he tried to find the source by going in. He couldn't find it on his own. So that is the parallel that Krishna is drawing here.
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, that makes sense. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll do a few more verses and then we can. So while giving the way to get out of the material world, Krishna is kind of describing about is about. Very rarely he describes in the Gita. There are few verses which we can relish and we can talk about. Rohini?
Next is Venkatesh Prabhu, and after him is Mukta Mataji.
Wonderful, thank you. Natad bhashayate suryo
न तद्भाषयते सूर्यो
na shashanko na pavakaha
न शशाङ्को न पावकः
yadgatva na nivartante
यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते
tadhama paramam mama.
तद्धाम परमं मम. That supreme abode of mine is not illuminated by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world.
Thank you. In the purport, in the third paragraph, a little bit down, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada actually invites us. He says one should be captivated by that information and he should desire to transfer himself to that eternal world and extricate himself from the false reflection of reality. This is another point I wanted to discuss. Now it came back into my mind. So please ignore the DMV, but let me see actually. You are able to see the paper, forget the DMV and everything. Just see that this is the paper, correct? Assume that this is the spiritual world. The material world actually is the reflection of spiritual world. This is the spiritual world and the material world actually is a reflection of the spiritual world. It comes from the spiritual world. And Srila Prabhupada says it's 180 degrees. So the entire spiritual world is here and then the reflection of the material world is here. And when the destruction happens, the material world again merges back to the spiritual world. Because it's a kind of reflection, everything that exists in this material world is there in spiritual world. And this actually was a big topic of discussion in one of the Bhakti Dikshas that we had. How is that possible? What do you mean that everything that is there in the material world is a reflection of spiritual world? Arey Baba, I'm trying to get out of this material world. If I go back to the spiritual world, which is a reflection, what's the point in going back? Might as well stay here. Yes or yes? Is that a logical thing? And then the bigger question comes is this. That we see so many negative things in the material world, like, terrorism and injustice and poverty and hunger and thirst. If it is a reflection of the spiritual world, then is there everything there as well? And if that is yes, why is Krishna asking us to go back? I'm happy here. Pata nahi wahan par, if the material world, these are the minute problems, spiritual world, it could be more. Yes or yes? Right? Another discussion I'll add to that. because this actually will come up if you, for those who have friends in other faith like Christianity or some other place. If God is all loving, all kind, and all benevolent personality, then where is all these negative things coming in the world? Which means that negativity is not a part of God, but it has to come from somewhere. And therefore they said there is Satan or the evil, and there is a fight going on between God, good and evil, God or Satan. And that's how they picture the material world. And that actually satisfies, because hey, God is always there and there is a Satan. So we need to, you're getting the thing. And one last point on this is, in 1970s, there was a rabbi. His name was Harold Kushner, and he wrote a book, Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. He was undergoing a situation that is, for those who are at ISV are somewhat familiar, but his that rabbi's daughter, she was a young daughter, and she had a very severe form of cancer, and she passed away. Cancer or some disease, I don't remember. I didn't read the book. And the father was helpless in seeing this little child, pass away at such a young age. Very disillusioned with this concept of God, that rabbi said, either God exists, but he's weak and incapable of protecting his devotees, or God is a more of not so benevolent, all-loving, all-kind person, but rather a malicious person who allows these harmful things to happen to his devotees. But then the bigger question is, how is the replica? Why is it a replica? This is a question. Is a fair enough question. Does it warrant some discussion? Does the hatred exist in spiritual world? Does envy exist in spiritual world? Does killing or murder or sadness that I want to escape so desperately from the material world, if they exist? So it's worth talking for a few minutes. When we say that everything is a replica or nothing in the material world exists without having its origin in spiritual world, it means that in the material world, those qualities take a perverted form because they are contaminated by the modes of material nature. But in the spiritual world, the same qualities actually provide a wholesome pleasure to Krishna. I'll give an example. If you are harsh to someone, assume somebody comes to your home, some guest. As soon as they come, you are scolding them and you are harsh to them and you are very indifferent to them and say you go away. Isn't that a horrible thing to do? Yes or yes? Or it's just me? But exactly the same thing happens in spiritual world. Krishna, after spending time with some other gopi, goes to meet Radharani, and then he has it. She is very unwelcoming. She is critical. She is saying, Krishna, go away. I don't want to see you. This is the supreme. If any guest comes, it's a big problem. Here we are talking of the supreme absolute truth. But because it gives pleasure to Krishna, that is a wholesome thing in spiritual world. But when in the material world, when it becomes very egoistic and self-centered and selfish, then it becomes a very perverted thing in the material world because it's contaminated. So while it's a replica of spiritual world, the material world, it is heavily contaminated with the modes of material nature and thus becomes perverted. When Krishna steals butter, you steal butter, it's a crime. But when Krishna steals butter, it is glorified for thousands of years to come as the highest delightful pastimes of Krishna. So the act of stealing is there in spiritual world, and it takes on a very criminal form in the material world. So every emotion is there, but it's wholesome. It is perfect in its existence in the spiritual world and perverted in the material world. So far, so good. Any questions? Any comments? It's Ram Babu Prabhu had a question.
Hare Krishna, Raju. Dhanavad Pranam.
And
One doubt, like we have other qualities like truthfulness, austerity. So if we consider everything in the material world is a perverted reflection, and but truthfulness and other qualities are considered as desirable qualities. And if you, I mean, their original form also should be similar to what is it here, right? So how do we understand that flow?
Any good qualities in the material world, if they are doubted in service of the Lord, actually become spiritual and good. And any qualities that are not doubted in service of Krishna, even though they are quote unquote good in this world, are actually not wholesome. For example, if there is this is one thing that happens pretty common amongst devotees, and I wouldn't I'm just thinking of a good example. I know a negative example. For example, if Krishna asked Yudhishthira to lie, so in the Mahabharata war, correct? You know the story, Rambabu? Rambabu, are you?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yeah. You know the story, right? I don't want to tell the story.
Yes, Prabhu.
So that actually when Yudhishthira Maharaj, he did not disobey Krishna. He could never do that. But what he did was to hesitate for a fraction of a second, to kind of, he hesitated for some time before he said that. And as soon as he said that, then his Dharmaraj status was so high, it is said that his wheels, when they were going on the soil, would never touch the soil. They were 2 inches above the soil, like the magnetic levitation trains that go in Japan and other places where they don't touch the rails. They're just having some cushion. So it was something like that. And then as soon as he kind of said that, then, the wheels actually touched the ground. And the acharyas say that because he told a lie, it happened. But more importantly, because he hesitated for a fraction of a second to follow the order of Krishna. So good or bad in the material world actually is completely dependent on the situation. For example, a knife. Is it knife a good or bad?
Can be good or it can be bad.
If it is, exactly, you get the idea. It is, material world is neither good nor bad, but how it is dovetailed to service of Krishna, it becomes good in that sense. So like truthfulness, simplicity, those are all absolutely important, but these are actually the qualities through which you can approach the spiritual world. These qualities are in the mode of goodness that can enable one, because if the spiritual world and the material world is a replica, then there should be some way to go from material to spiritual world, and that is a mode of goodness. And those qualities come under that category.
Okay. Yes, so they are still considered contaminated, and when they are engaged in the service of the Lord, they will help us to.
Correct. Krishna actually says that the mode of goodness is the best, but nevertheless they are conditioned by a sense of happiness in the world. And even though you are staying in the mode of goodness, it's no guarantee that you'll go back to spiritual. You'll come back again.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Ankita Mataji and then Samir.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. I have a reflection and a question.
Yes.
Quick reflection. Thank you so much for showing us that material world is exact replica. I was thinking about the trait of murder, how murder is absolutely evil in the material world, but in the spiritual world, when Krishna kills Putana or Trinavatra or Kalia, like it's glorified. It's all like, it's very nice. So even envy as well, like all those qualities are transcendental in the spiritual world. So it's very easy to understand that material world is exact replica of spiritual world through these qualities as well. I have a quick question, Prabhu. In the purport of the first text, Prabhupada is refuting where impersonalists say that Brahman is the root of this tree. And then he writes, if Brahman is the center of all manifestations, if what impersonalists say, then this material world is a manifestation of the center of 180 degrees, and the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. I didn't understand this part, Prabhu.
So on the axis, you can see that there is the 180 would be, the circle is a 360, and then in between is the 180 degrees. So, and then when you fold the circle, so it becomes exactly like you open up at 180 degrees. The
Yes.
top and the part. So that is the 180 degree aspect. The impersonalist, the problem or the logical problem is, if material world is a reflection of spiritual world, and if spiritual world according to the impersonalist is formless, no variety, and it's completely free of any varieties and forms, then how can it be a reflection? Shouldn't the reflection in the material world also be formless? That is the question that Srila Prabhupada is posing.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, it's much clear. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat Pranam. Prabhu, we read one purport where Prabhupada was mentioning that devotees should have desire to go to spiritual world. I don't remember the exact words, but that's what we read. So from here, it is clear that Prabhupada wants all the devotees to have the desire, but many times we hear that, oh, devotees should not have the desire to go. They should simply have the desire to serve, like that. So that is my question, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an excellent question. Did everybody get the question? Okay. And the words that Timir was mentioning was in the Natad Bhashayate Suryo, that particular words. And Srila Prabhupada writes, one should be captivated by this information and should enable or should be eager to go to the spiritual world and extricate himself from the material world. So Timir, and then Timir's question, which is so apt, is that we shouldn't ask for liberation. We should not aspire to go to the spiritual world. But then how can we understand this contradiction? Right, Timir? Is that the...
Yes, Prabhu, because like what I'm saying is that Prabhupada is saying that we should aspire to go. And sometimes we hear from devotees saying that we should just serve. Yeah. So
yeah. So the implicit assumption in this thing is that physically I'll have to give up this body and then focus only on the spiritual world and go there. The idea behind the pure devotional service is, as Srila Rupa Goswami writes in the Nectar of Devotion or Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which we are going to do next semester. He, in that particular, is a beautiful and famous verse. It is called Iha Yasya Harer Dasye Karmana Manasagira Nikleshvapyavastasu Jivan Muktasa Uchyate. He says that in this particular material world, who is 24/7 absorbed in Krishna through mind, body, and words. Karmana, manasa, gira. So karmana is activities or bodily activities. Karmana, manasa, mind, and gira is words. That particular person is already in the spiritual world. So our aspiration is that how can we be absorbed in Krishna 24/7? It doesn't, at that matter, at that stage, it doesn't matter, Timir, if you are here or you are in hell or you are anywhere, because you are already absorbed in Krishna. Technically, you are there, even though you are here physically in the body. Is that okay?
yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. And honestly speaking, there are few devotees, this pure devotional service is too much. I really want to get out of this material world. And that's my desire. And Prabhu, that's what is my desire. I'm sorry, I'm being very honest. Fair. If that is your desire, then just pray to the Lord and he can grant you that desire. And in fact, it's much easier to get that particular desire as well. So I'm not against those who just say, Prabhu, I want to leave the material world and go back to spiritual world. Even then you should be captivated by that information. And then pray to Krishna to give you liberation. Either ways is fine. Is that helpful?
Yeah,
Dr.
thank
Nandi?
you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. Ankurji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. In the beginning, you mentioned one analogy, extended upon the banyan tree analogy, wherein you said that it is difficult or impossible to identify which is the original banyan tree. Is that applicable to material world, or that was the side point that you mentioned about banyan trees?
It is applicable to the material world because we cannot trace where this material world is beginning. If the scientists might say, you know what, I'll trace the origin of where this material world starts or what is the source of it. And then that was the analogy I was trying to make.
Okay, so I took it as one material world is giving rise to another material world. That's not the fact. Because in banyan tree, one banyan tree is giving rise to another banyan tree, so it's impossible to find out which banyan tree is the original. That is more like applicable to Krishna avatar as one candle lighting other. So that's what the confusion. But you're saying that the extent to which this analogy applies is it's impossible to find out the origin of the banyan tree.
Correct.
Thank you for clarifying, Prabhu.
No, thank you, Ankuji. I didn't know you were from IIT, Ankuji.
Hare Krishna.
That's amazing.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
One point, Timur. I'll come back to you, but I'll just clarify Ankush and then I'll come back to you. Is that okay? Okay, thank you. The idea that material scientists might think that we can break open the atoms and we can go to the far reaches of the universe and we can find, or we can size up this whole universe and find everything. Krishna is saying, don't think, good luck with that. You'll never find out where this whole thing is coming from. As much as one example I can give is, if there is like a, in some forest, there are spider webs that are really huge. They can cover an entire room. And assume that an insect is trapped in that particular web. It's a small insect. It can never find out who caused this entire structure to be in place that I'm trapped in. So same way Krishna is giving that. Is that a helpful thing, Ankurji?
Thank you, Prabhu. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Timur.
Thank you, Prabhu. As Ankur Prabhu was asking the question, then it came to my mind that in the material world, whatever karma we do in this life, that forms our next body. And similarly, whatever we have done in the previous life. So like that, we are taking bodies after bodies, but we will be, and we know that this body is the result of the previous body, but we cannot find out that where did karma began. So I was thinking in that term that we will, even in the case of the material world also, we will not be able to find out how it began, the roots.
Well said. I agree. That's a nice point as well. We cannot trace out where, when did, that's another thing. Thank you for bringing that point. That's another point, where did I start? How did I kind of come into this material world? Anyway, we discussed that at length. I don't want to be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I mean, I don't want to stall. We can take my question afterwards if it's slowing down.
Well, we'll take your question, the last one, and then we can go on.
Okay. Prabhu, so the perversion is happening, right, from the spiritual world into the material world. What is causing the perversion? Is it the modes of the nature? Is it false ego? Or is it just by design that it is designed as a perverted reflection? So what is the factor there?
Thank you. Krishangi, can you just look up 5th chapter, 15th verse, please? Because that's a good point. Excellent question, because what gives? The bottom line is what gives. As in, like, if God is inspiring me to do this, then God is responsible. and why am I being punished? Or if I am doing it entirely, then looks like I'm not doing entirely as well. So, where or what gives is 15:15. Krishna answers that. And then he says
It's
that
2 o'clock.
5th chapter in the 15th verse, he says that Nadatte kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhuhu agnenavritam jnanam tena mohyantu jantva. He says, nor does the Supreme Lord assumes anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers the real knowledge. The first thing that happens, Kanai Gopal Prabhu, when the jiva comes to the material world, your true knowledge is completely covered. You are just, you think that I belong to this material world. And somehow or other, this is my life and death. I can't go anywhere else. So that is the first starting point. And from there, because you are illusioned like that, your mind and senses will take over. And you keep on doing the same thing again and again. Till you come to the true realization of, or the knowledge of who you are. Did I answer your question at all, or was it completely tangential?
No, Prabhu, I'm joining the point. So you are saying that ignorance is the factor that's covering one's true spiritual nature, or the true spiritual nature of everything that exists around us. And that kind of expands as we continue our journey in the material world.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And just to add to that same point, when Narada Muni asked Vyasadeva, why are you so despondent with that? And then Vyasadeva says, I don't know why, you tell me why. And he says, you have not adequately glorified the spotless pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And Vyasadeva, he goes into deep meditation. That Vyasa Samadhi, it is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, 1st canto, 7th chapter, actually is the basis for the Bhagavatam. And in that, there is particular verse, Yaya sammohito jivo atmanam trigunatmakam paropi manutenartam tatkritam chapi bhadyate. It is said that bewildered by the three modes of material nature, the jiva thinks, I belong to this. I am this world. I am that matter. I am this existence. And therefore, he takes this on. So that is that ignorance that drives the jiva to continuously go and stay in this material world. So Kanai Gopal Prabhu and other book distributors, that we are giving this knowledge to somebody is the highest service. And that's the reason why, you see that somebody is trapped in a horrible net and you tell them how to get out of it and what is the way to get out of it. It's the greatest act of charity to them. So.
Thank you, Prabhu. Prabhu, just a last follow-up to that, like for a person who is truly spiritually realized, everything becomes spiritual, right? So how does this verse make sense to one at that level of understanding? Because ultimately everything is Krishna's energy, everything is spiritual. So how does this verse make sense to such a person?
Which verse? The 5:15?
No, what we are discussing today, like the material world being perverted reflection of the spiritual world.
Excellent, thank you. No, it doesn't, because they see, there are three kinds of devotees: the Kanishta, the Madhyama, and the Uttama. For a Uttama Adhikari, there is no question of seeing anyone. There is no question of preaching, because he sees everybody is absorbed in Krishna and Krishna's service, whether material or spiritual. So to that person, yes, you're so right. There is no distinction. He doesn't see anything perverted.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for stalling. Thank you.
You didn't stall. Actually, I'll tell you a shocking secret. I don't get any shloka commissions, as in I have to complete certain verses for every class and I get some commission. Shloka commissions, not sales commissions, but shloka commissions. The whole purpose here is actually to ask and discuss questions and to reveal our doubts or realizations. So that's the whole purpose. We're not stalling. So please keep asking. If need be, if a worst come worst case, we can always have one more class, but we'll never have not discussions.
Thank you, Prabhu.
No, thank you. All right, Rohini, back to you. We'll do a few more verses. 15.
Next is Mukta Mataji.
Excellent. All right. And now, after explaining about his material world, or his spiritual world, Krishna says about the jivas. Who are the jivas? Here is a defining thing between the jiva and the Krishna, and in the entire Bhagavad-Gita. Mamaivamsho jivaloke
Mamaevamsho jivaloke
jiva bhuta sanatanaha
jiva bhuta sanatanaha
manah shashtani indriyani
manashasthani indriyani
prakritisthani karshati.
prakritisthani karshati. Translation: the living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the six senses, which include the mind.
Thank you. So Krishna here, this is the first time in Bhagavad Gita. He did say about the jivas being his part and parcels, but here he's so clearly saying they are my part and parcels, and they are struggling very hard with six senses in this material world. And Srila Prabhupada explains Karshati is the struggle, hard struggle of material existence. The only way out of this hard struggle is to actually become fully Krishna conscious. There is no shortcuts here. We cannot voluntarily say, I will give up the hard struggle. No, sir. You are forced to work hard because you are in this material world. The more one surrenders to Krishna, then the more Krishna takes care of that particular devotee. And in that state, only comes ananyas chintayanto mam yajana paryupasate tesham nitya yuktanam yogakshemam vahami. Krishna says that I preserve what they have and I carry what they lack. So, till we reach to that stage, one has to do one's struggle in the material world. Next verse, please. And Krishna says how the transmigration happens. Ready?
Next is Shama Karuna Mataji.
Haribol Shama Karuna Mataji, thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Shariram yadavapnoti
Shariram yadavapnoti
yaccha putkramatishvaraha
yachapi putramatishvaraha
grihitvaitani samyati
grihitvaitani samyati
vayurgandhamivashaya.
vayurgandhani vashayat. Translation: the living entity in the material world carries its different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. And continuing, the next verse continues with the same.
Akshay Prabhu.
Thank you, Akshay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Shrotram chakshuhu sparshanam cha
Shrotram chakshu sparshanam cha
rasanam grahanameva cha
rasanam granameva cha
adhishtaya manaschayam
adhisthaya manashthayam
vishayan upasevate.
chayan upashevate. Translation: the living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects.
Thank you. So the example Krishna gives here is like the air that carries the aroma. The air is going through a rose garden. It carries the smell of a rose, and it is going over a dump yard. Then it carries a very foul smell. But the air in of itself doesn't have smell. Similarly, the soul in of itself is so pure, the way it associates with the modes of material nature, to that extent you get the body, as mentioned in the 14th chapter. 15, next verse, please. Then.
Ankita Mataji.
Okay, thank you, Ankita Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Utkramantam stitam vapi
Utkramantam sthitam vapi
Gunjanam va gunanvitam
bhunjanam va gunamvitam
vimodhananu pashyanti
vimudhananupashyanti
Pashyanti jnana chakshushaha.
Pashyanti jnana chakshusha. Translation: the foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Hare Krishna.
Wonderful. Hare Krishna. This is what we are here for. The purpose of reading Bhagavad-Gita is to get the jnana chakshu. You can have chakshu or eyes, but jnana chakshu, Krishna is talking, is a whole other thing, because that you can never get by getting hundreds of degrees from Harvard or from having like laser kind of thing fitted in your eyes and you can see. No, jnana chakshu is actually the eyes seeing through the knowledge of the scripture. And you can see how those bereft of that particular knowledge, they have no clue. They ask them, who cares? This is one life I have to enjoy. I'll be more than happy to get my maximum enjoyment. I don't care what's happening in the next life. But Krishna is saying it's a very serious situation here, and one has to get the jnana chakshu, or the eyes through knowledge. Next verse.
Next is Sham Sudhakar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Thank you. Yatanto yoginaschainam
Yatanto yoginaschainam
pashyantyatmanavastitam
pashyantyatmani avashtitam
yatantopyakritatmano
yatantopyakritatmano
nainam pashyantyachetasaha.
nainam pashyantachete achetasaha. Translation: the endeavoring transcendentalists who are situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So this gives a proof if one is able to withstand, because in the COVID, in the modern COVID, there are many medical professionals who are being burnt out, and they have said that they have never seen so much of destruction and so much of fatalities. People leaving their bodies, and they are being burnt out not only physically but mentally, because you cannot take it. And part of the problem is, it's hard. Death is, for those whose eyes are not trained in knowledge, death can be really hard. It's impossible, actually. Arjuna was terrified. He was not a person with timid heart. He fought the devatas. He fought hundreds of battles before. And then, all of a sudden, when compassion overtook, he was shaken. The death was, how can I do this? And that was his whole argument at the beginning. Krishna, I don't want to fight this battle because I have to kill so many people. Death is, it's one thing to kind of theoretically speak about it, but when you are on the field witnessing death, you will not be unshaken. And if one is aware of how this world works, then you won't be as disturbed by it. It's not like you will be a stone with no compassion, but you won't be disturbed so much by it. Fair enough? Thank you. We'll do one more verse.
Next is Priyanka Mataji.
Thank you. So for the next few verses, Krishna talks about, in a nutshell, he covers what the material world is, what is the spiritual world. And then he says how the jiva transmigrates. And then now he comes to the point about how I am the maintainer of all the jivas. I am the Purushottama that maintains all the jivas. Priyanka Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yadadityagatam tejo
Yadadityagatam tejo
Jagad bhashayate khilam
Jagat bhashayate khilam.
Chandramasi yachagno
Yat chandramasi yat chagno.
Tattejo vidhimamakam.
Tattejo vidhimamakam. Translation. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me, and the splendor of the moon and splendor of fire are also from me.
Thank you. Actually, Mataji, can you go to Krishangi Mataji, please go to the second paragraph, and then if you can try to highlight with the rise of the sun. It is that, yeah, thank you. You can read till the end, Priyanka Mataji.
Okay. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff. They set fire to start the factories, etc. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So, if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Without His mercy, there cannot be sun. Without His mercy, there cannot be moon. And without His mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Hare Krishna. I think these are, if you have a conversation going on with your colleagues or with your family members who are not devotees necessarily, or your neighbors, or any stretch, and if they appreciate at least sun, moon, and if we can help them understand that we don't turn on the sun. It's not like there is a person that turns on the sun in the morning and the sun starts, and then at the evening somebody has to turn on the sun and turn off the sun. It doesn't work like that, and we have no control on it. And we can use these, and Srila Prabhupada, these are some of the places where he helps us preach, or even just share our thoughts with those who might not necessarily be aware of Krishna consciousness. So continuing on for the next couple of verses, Krishna is just saying how he is helping the living entities.
Next is Vaishnavi.
Haribol Vaishnavi.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
All right. Gama Vishya cha Bhutani.
Gama Vishya cha Bhutani.
Dharayamya Amojasa.
Dharayamya Aham Ojasa.
Pushnami Chaushadhi Sarva.
Pushnami Chaudishi Sarva.
Somo Bhutvo Rasatmakaha.
Soma Bhutva Rasatmakaha. Translation. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So Srila Prabhupada writes in the purport that if the Lord were not sustaining the planets would just go out of, they would go out of orbits. They would just go disarray. And you can do that experiment at home. You can tell to somebody who is like, you can take flour or salt or anything, and you can hold it in the hand. And you can say that all those particles of flour or salt which are there in the hand are staying there because you are holding them. Yes or yes? If you just open the hand or just turn it over, they'll be completely scattered because there is no force that is holding them in place. So one should ask then, what is the power that is holding the planets in place? The scientists to agree that if the earth moves even 1 or 2 inches closer to the sun, the life will be completely destroyed. And if it is so precise at this vast distances, then there should be something that is holding it together, or there is some, you might not agree with God. You might not say, but at least you will say that there is some higher power, there is some, higher truth or higher personality, higher call it universe, call it anything that is holding the planets. Otherwise, how can the planets stay? They'll just be scattered. Right? Yeah. Next verse, please.
Next is Mrinakshi Vishnupriya Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva
Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva
Praninam Dehamashritaha
Praninam Dehashritaha
Pranapana Samayuktaha
Pranapana Samayuktaha
Pachamannam Chaturvidam.
Panchamannam Chaturvidam. Translation. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outgoing and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
And again, the same thing happens. I don't think Ishwari Radha Mataji has a switch somewhere in her brain or on her person where you can say, okay, fire of digestion, turn on. Like you have heater in the house, right? We need to turn it on. We need some heat. You turn on the heater, but we don't have a fire of digestion on our head. On off. No, there is no switch. That is Krishna is saying that I am digesting. Think about it. We all eat food and we don't have a clue of how it digests, but it gets digested. The energy is supplied to the body. Life is great. I was in hell before I ate, and now I'm in heaven. What is the transformation? As Krishna is saying that I'm doing it. And then 4 types of foodstuffs are mentioned in the purport as well. And the same thing will come up also in the Gurvashtakam. Chaturvidha Sri Bhagavad Prasad. Anyways, next verse. Please. Any questions? Any comments? Okay.
Yes, Prabhu. I have a couple.
Yes.
So one question is, when it says Krishna is sustaining the planets in the orbit, is the implication that the law of or the force of gravity, that's coming from Krishna and that's how he's sustaining the planets? Or is there some more literal meaning to that I am entering into the planets and sustaining them?
The second one is the right answer. He is entering into each planet and he's sustaining them. And superficially, because the scientists don't want to factor in God, they have to explain somehow or other. So they said, okay, gravitation is the answer.
Okay, so his the understanding is that he is literally entering the planet to sustain them.
Yes.
Okay, second question is, it's a very well said argument that how can things exist so precisely that all the planets are moving in their orbits? Who has done that calculation? Who has set them like that? So that implies that there is some higher power, some higher intelligence. But is there a similar understanding that a layman can get for the fact that that higher power is still existing? People say God is that. I haven't heard. Yeah, I have heard actually. Some people say that God is that. So what simple argument a layman can understand for the fact that that higher power is actually still existing? It's not that he or she set up the things in motion and then gone. My question making sense, Prabhu?
Yes, it does. So you should ask them, well, I have a question. When was the traffic lights kind of set up in your city? They'll pick any answer because it's a imaginary 60 years, 70 years.
Yes.
They'll say 70 years ago.
Yes.
Well, because they're set up 70 years ago. If I jump red light, nothing will happen today, right? I won't get a fine and everything, or we are okay. So what nonsense?
I will get a fine.
Yeah, you will get a fine, which means that the laws have been set into motion and there is a person who is monitoring it to make sure it happens. Just because that the person who set in the motion is not there doesn't mean that the implication is not there. When you say God is dead, it truly means that everything is chaotic, which means there is no order in structure. Then you can validate that assumption that God is dead. As much as jumping a traffic light today will also have consequences, which means there is a functional traffic authority that governs the traffic is still existing. Is that a fair answer?
Okay, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So next 5 verses, we discuss about Vedas. Krishna actually talks about what is Vedas, and it's a pretty famous verse.
Next is Chaya Mataji.
Chaya Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat pranam.
Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto.
Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto.
Mattah smritirjnanam apohanam cha.
Mattah smritirjnanam apohanam cha.
Vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyo.
Vedaischa sarvairahameva vedyo.
Vedanta kritveda videva chaham.
Vedanta kritveda videva chaham. Translation: I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Thank you.
Forgetfulness here Krishna is mentioning is the fact that I forget my body. After I give up my body in the next life, I won't remember who I was in this life. And the proof is that I don't remember what I was in the past life. So that is going to be the case. But if Krishna wants, the remembrance can come. And in the case of Jada Bharat, Maharaj Bharat, as we know the story of how he became a deer, but in the deer's body, he was remembering what all he did in the past life and why he was in the body of deer. And so Krishna can give remembrance if he so chooses to as well. And Krishna is saying that from me come the Vedas, I'm the compiler. And if you know me, then you know Vedas, because the essence of all Vedas is to come to the conclusion that Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. Next.
Santosh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Santosh.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat pranam.
Dva imau purushau loke.
Dva imau purusho loke.
Ksharaschakshara eva cha.
Ksharaschakshara eva cha.
Ksharaha sarvani bhutani.
Kshara sarvani bhutani.
Kutastokshara uchyate.
Kutastokshara uchyate. Translation: there are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is infallible.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, I have a couple of questions. Maybe I can ask later.
Sure, you can ask now. We can take a break. But let me complete
Sure.
The thoughts on this, and then Krishna is saying that there are 2 types of living entities. Dvaima purushau loke ksharas chakshara eva cha ksharaha sarvani bhutani kutastokshara uchyate. So the fallible living entities are the ones conditioned by material existence. People like me, I don't know about the exalted souls here, so I don't want to point, but people like me who are conditioned by material existence, it's fallible. And those who are attained perfection and who are in the spiritual world are infallible. And then the word Krishna uses is kutastho. Kutastho means that they are one with him, And one with him means not that they merged into the existence of the Lord, forgetting their own existence, but they are one with him in the intention of the Lord. What the Lord wants, the Jiva wants exactly the same thing. And that is called in alignment with Krishna. Kutastha Akshara Uchyate. All right. Yes, go ahead, Santosh.
The first question is around not related to this chapter, but it's related to third chapter, 35th verse, like where Krishna mentions that we have to do our duty, even that is not like we can, even though if we are doing others' duty perfectly, it's good to do our duty imperfectly. So I was just trying to understand, like in from the practical perspective, that if a person has given some occupation which he after doing for some time, which he did realize that he's not actually enjoying that duty or work, then if he finds another occupation which he actually enjoys, and he was able to get some more better satisfaction compared to the first work, so in that case he if I just get the analogy of this verse, so because it's a second work, so that means he has found the real work in the second one. Is the second one is his dharma, or the first one is his dharma?
The biggest question there is, why are you choosing to quit your first work?
Like maybe it like
and I'll answer that. Sorry,
Sure.
because the generic question, I'll continue with the answer. If Krishna is saying, if you choose to quit work because of fear, bodily pain, or because of some other thing, then your renunciation is not correct. Let me give an example. Arjuna did not want to fight the battle in the Bhagavad-Gita in the first chapter. And Krishna said, that is your duty, you have to fight. He was forced to fight. Right? So when you quit the first job and when you said you are enjoying the second job, if the first job is difficult, I'll give an example. If by nature a person is a businessman, right? And the first job, the natural instinct was to do business, and he or she did the business. And there were losses in the business. There were some setbacks in the business. And now that person said, no, I'm not fit for business. I need to move and become a Brahmana, or I have to become something else. Then Krishna is saying that is dangerous. Just even do your duty perfectly, do your duty imperfectly, rather than doing somebody else's duty perfectly. So that is the reason my question was, why did you choose to quit? If it was out of the discovery of your natural occupation. I'll give another example. How many people actually worked in a firm, in a big firm, and they said, this is not me. I'll be earning nothing, but I want to run my own business. That is the right attitude, because you're a Vaishya. You are not a Shudra. Your joy isn't just running a business. Of course, you want to make money, and that's the nature. But you see the right and wrong attitude. You get the idea, right?
Yeah, yes, Prabhu. So for the question, so let's say if that person is not actually enjoying, or it's not in line with the nature, the work that he's doing, and like maybe the second work is actually helping him to get to get alignment with his mentality or nature. So that makes in that scenario it is fine, right? Or
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Definitely. But more often than not, the mind is a little devious in this regard. It might make you think that, hey, that's your nature, you should try that. So you have to be a little careful on that front.
Yeah, yes.
And or you or whoever is kind of doing that should be careful on that front. It's always you get a trusted mentor, who can know your nature and then help you like that.
Yes, bro. Sure. And the second question is around like whenever a person leaves, whenever the person leaves his material body, so does the subtle body actually like is aware of the surroundings of the material body? Like for example, in movies we see, right, like whenever the soul moves out, then he can see everything, but he cannot touch them. So that actually, does it actually, is there any specific thing described in the Shastras, or that's just some created by in the movies, or that actually happens?
So this is a ball, right? And then if I have to, if this hand wants to grasp the ball, I have to go and get the ball using the hand here, right? This hand. But I have the desire, I don't have the hand, I cannot grasp the ball. Hand becomes a tool of my desire to grasp the ball. So similarly, the subtle body actually is acting through the gross body to achieve what we need to achieve or to enjoy the material world. So if a person prematurely dies or more horribly commits suicide and you have desires, then even though you want to grasp the matter, you don't have the physical thing to grasp the matter. The material desires are there. So yes, it is a very horrible situation. People think that by committing suicide, my problems are solved. Actually, your problems are a million times increased because you didn't purify your subtle body, and then you gave up, and then what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yes.
Right.
Even
Bhagavad-Gita, you'll realize how more and more you're conditioned, how more and more you're controlled and implicated in this material world.
Yes. So that means even if his like, let's say his subtle body has purified himself during his own lifetime, but whenever that subtle body leaves the material body, so it cannot actually get in contact again, but it can actually see the surroundings, right?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. Because in the story of Ajamil, the Yamadutas came to grab the soul out of the body. And Ajamil was at that time very, very fearful. His material body was lying there, but the spiritual body and the subtle body actually could perceive all the pains and everything and awareness of what was going on. So yes.
Sure, bro. Thank you for clarifying.
All right, we will do a few more verses and then we can, and there are about 4 more verses, and then we can.
Next is Kanai Gopal Prabhu.
Kanai Gopal Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Uttamaha Purushastvanyah.
Uttamaha Purushastvanyah.
Paramatmetyudahritah.
Paramatmetyudahritah.
Yo lokam trayamavishya.
Yo lokam trayamavishya.
Bibhartavyaya Ishvaraha. 17th verse.
Bibhartavyaya Ishvaraha. Translation. Besides these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them.
Thank you. Krishna uses dvau imau, which means he uses plural when he refers to 2 kinds of living entities. But for himself, he just uses one because he is the supreme absolute truth, distinct from both the fallible and infallible. Therefore, he says that besides these 2, there is the supreme absolute truth who is maintaining both of them. Next verse.
Payal Mataji is next.
Yasmat ksharamati
Yasmaksharamam atihoham.
Sharadapi chottamaha.
Sharadapi chottamaha.
Atosmi loke vede cha.
Atosmi loke vede cha.
Pratitaha purushottamaha.
Pratitaha purushottamaha. Translation. because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that supreme person.
Thank- Krishna is emphatically saying that who he is, what his position is. And in the next two verses, Krishna is saying, how can one know him without doubt? Text 19.
Dhira Madhavi Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thanks for giving me a chance.
Yo mamevam sammudho
Yo mamevam sammudho
janati purushottamam
janati purushottamam
sasarvavid bhajati mam
sa sarva vidyu bhajati mam
sarva bhavena bharata.
sarva bhavena bharata. Translation. Whoever know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engage himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata.
Thank you. So Krishna is pretty clear. If you know him, then you know everything because he is the absolute truth. And we'll do the next verse.
Next is Atulya Harinam from
Atulya Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu Dandvatna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Text 20. Iti guhyatamam shastram.
Iti guhyatamam sastram.
Idam uktam maya nagha.
Idam uktam maya naga.
Etad budva buddhiman syat.
Etad budva buddhiman syat.
Krita kritayascha bharata.
Krita kritayascha bharata. Translation. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise and his endeavors will know perfection.
Thank you. Can you do the last paragraph of the purport? Atulya Harinam Prabhu, please.
Sure. While one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus, one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature. He becomes attached to matter and the possession of the matter. The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart.
Can you repeat that?
The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of heart, and the rest of the chapter from the 6th verse through the end discusses Purushottama Yoga. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-Gita in the matter of Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person.
Haribo! Congratulations. We have 3 more chapters to go, 16th, 17th, and 18th of Bhagavad-Gita. So we can stop sharing the screen. Mate, thank you. Yes, questions, comments, concerns?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Can I ask a question, Prabhu?
Yes, yes, sir.
Prabhuji, after Krishna has described this tree in the first few verses, in the 5th verse, he is telling that, what are the qualities that one need to have to come out of, to cut this tree. So looks like there the qualities, right? Some of them can be developed and some of them it may not be possible to develop them by one's own endeavor. So how should we gain confidence on the spiritual path with these kind of if some qualities are difficult to develop, like it is said that one who is done with material lust. So in that sense, nobody can be done with material lust.
Actually, it's so lust is a very broad topic, and Arjuna discusses with Krishna as well, that what causes a person to act sinfully. And Krishna explains that it is just lust born of the mode of passion. Later, which is all devouring wrath that pushes the living entities to act like that. Actually, Rambabu Prabhu, it might be surprising to know that material lust can it's not a difficult thing at all, because if one serves Krishna, then slowly it's just a matter of time. It's just a matter of time before this thing is kind of completely destroyed. Give me 1 minute. I will have to look this up, and then 10th chapter. If I can ask Krishnangi Mataji to do the which verse is that? Yeah, 10:33:39. I can forward you the. Just Krishnangi Mataji, I'm putting it in the chat. You can just click on the link.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you, Prabhu.
You can open that. Or I can share as well. Oh, okay, good. All right. Who didn't get a chance to read?
Prabhuji, Prananath Prabhu was going to.
Pranath Prabhu, excellent. Haribol Pranath Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavat
All right,
pranam.
please, let's do this verse. This is one of the most beautiful verses that everybody can actually take to heart and memorize. Vikriditam brajavadubhiridam cha Vishnu.
Vikriditam brajavadhubhiridam cha Vishnu.
Shraddhanvito nusunuyadatavarnayedyah.
Shraddhanvitanushrunyadatavarnayedya.
Bhaktim param bhagavati pratilabhya kamam.
Bhaktim param bhagavati pratilabhya kamam.
Hridrogamashvapahinotya dhiraha.
Hridrogamashvapahinoti achirena dhira.
Please do the translation and purport.
Okay, 1 second. Yeah. Anyone who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Thus, he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Purport, please.
Yes, Prabhu. The extraordinary power of Lord Krishna's conjugal pastimes is clearly revealed here. Qualitatively, the Lord's spiritual loving pastimes are the diametric opposite of material lusty affairs, so much so that simply by hearing about the Lord's pastimes, a devotee conquers sex desire. By reading pornographic literature or hearing about material romance, we certainly do not conquer sex desire, but rather increase our lust. But hearing or reading about the Lord's conjugal affairs has exactly the opposite effect because they are of the opposite nature, being purely spiritual. Therefore, it is by the causeless mercy of Lord Krishna that he exhibits his Rasa Leela within this world. If we become attached to this narration, we will experience the... Can you please scroll down, Mataji? We will experience the bliss of spiritual love and thus reject the perverted reflection of that love, which is called lust. As nicely put by Lord Krishna in the Bhagavad-Gita 2.59, Param Drishtva Nivartate, once having directly experienced the Supreme, one will not return to material pleasures. Thus end the purports of the humble servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, to the 10th canto, 33rd chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Rasa Dance. Hare Krishna.
Thank you
Hare
very much.
Thank you.
So Ramababu Prabhu, I think the goal would be that how can I cultivate attachment to Krishna? How can I get more deeper, desire, that hankering to kind of perform little devotional service, and that undoubtedly actually will remove this tendency that's within the heart. And I'm so grateful, Rambabu Prabhu, that you asked that question. It's a big topic. It's a topic that troubles the devotees a lot. And thank you for asking that question. Is that good, or are there more follow-ups? I know it's a theoretical answer because the question is something that is a little more, personalized and based on person to person. So.
Yes, Prabhuji. It gives some clarity. But the thing is, when it comes to stability, right? So you practice devotional service, and then you'll be staying in mode of goodness and then doing the nice devotional activities. But that doesn't sustain for a long time because of the kind of work we are doing in the offices.
Yeah.
So again, it becomes a cycle.
Yeah. And therefore, that's the reason why we have to do, we have to have a regulated association with devotees, very regulated association of our sadhana. Because we are still in the material world, there is always the possibility of being sucked down by the material existence. So, but Krishna says that if you just surrender unto me, I'll protect you from all sinful reactions. And that is our greatest hope. While we understand our position, but we know that Krishna is supremely powerful and there is nothing impossible for him. And we have that faith, and then we push on. Is that okay?
Yes, Prabhuji.
I know, I agree. I agree with what you just said. We can discuss more offline. Maybe.
Yeah. Yes, Prabhuji, we can discuss. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, concerns? We have 7 more minutes back. Anything else?
I have a question, but I like to go the last because my question is not related to this chapter.
Okay, go ahead, Pradeepji.
Okay, so I have some plants and those, and I was looking for the fertilizer, organic fertilizer, and what I see in the market is most of those organic fertilizers have that dehydrated blood or the bone meals. So I was wondering what the organic food we are buying from the market, is it safe for us to eat? Because it's highly possible that those farmers using those one of such kind of the bone meals or the dehydrated blood containing fertilizers. So as a Vaishnava or Hindu, should I go for the organic, or is better to stick with the inorganic? At least I know that I'm not fitting on somebody.
The question are you asking is regarding the farming or buying the produce?
Buying the produce which is which the farmer to produce which food they use the dehydrated blood or the bone meal fertilizers.
Since time immemorial, the earth has been consuming the dead bodies of all living entities. And it's just the way the world is. If the farmers use it, there is no way you can control the farmer, nor can you stop. The only way you can actually ensure that you have a produce that you know for sure it is completely quote unquote vegetarian is that you grow them by yourself, where you don't use any of this and you grow it from the ground and you can have it. Is that a fair certainty, Pradeep?
Yes, but practically not possible.
Exactly. So that is the reason why Krishna says that, you know, whatever you eat, we get the best possible and the most ethically sourced vegetables. But then, you know, Krishna says, whatever you eat, you offer it to me first. And that will help remove all these negative things that are associated with food or prasadam. Otherwise, you know, at least in this country, it is impossible. You know, there is the same argument can be made about milk. You know, there is a whole thing of ahimsa milk that's going on. Can you get ahimsa milk? More importantly, can your body digest ahimsa milk? Can you? What if then you can't drink milk? But scripture says you have to drink milk. So where do we land on this? And you know, when you get deep into this, then our mind is going to go away from devotional service, which is the most important thing. So the best thing is to do the best you can to get the best possible material, but then offer it to Krishna, and you know, other deficiencies will be kind of taken care of. Otherwise, there is no end to it. There is no, you know. So same thing will come with the grains. You know, where are the grains grown? How was the done? It's hard to kind of keep track. That's my humble opinion. I don't know if it satisfies you or not.
Yeah, so I think rather than focusing on the problem, focus on the solution. Whatever we cook or eat, offer to the God. So the negativity and all those things taken care.
Exactly. Krishna, otherwise God is so cruel. On one hand, he doesn't accept anything or makes it so difficult for us to get food stuff. On the other hand, if you don't eat food stuff, you'll die. So what sort of God is this? Krishna is saying, offer it to me. Simple. You know, don't worry so much about the sourcing. Just offer what you eat to me. And then, you know, and then obviously we do have some dietary restrictions like, you know, no non-vegetarian or eggs or onion, garlic, so on and so forth. And then after that, you know, you offer it to Krishna. And then Krishna says, I'll remove every contamination because you offered it to me with love. It becomes purified.
Okay. Thank you. Got it.
Thank you.
I got the solution.
Thank you. I'm serious. That's the only thing. I've been asked this question so many times in the past. You know, I know what will happen. I'll tell you one more thing. I'll leave everybody on the humorous note till we meet next time. So a person gets fixated that, my God, you know, the cows are being slaughtered and they're being tortured for milk, and that's not a fact. That's not a lie. It is a fact. Then okay, let me kind of get more into this research, and you start doing research. Then you go start visiting farms. You start trying to get the contacts of the farmers. You try to get, you know, how the milk is processed. What are they putting in the milk? And by the time you end 4 years later, you will be an absolute PhD in milk, but you have forgotten chanting Hare Krishna. So
yes.
Then you are actually majoring in minor rather than, you know, majoring in major.
Major. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
It is Kali Yuga. I mean, we have to accept. And for those, yeah, we'll discuss next time, Pradeep. One verse in Bhagavatam I'll discuss next week, which kind of, I'm not making this up. Actually, there is a scriptural evidence for what I'm saying, and we can discuss it in the next class, if you remind me.
Yep, I will. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. I will see you all in 2 weeks from now. It's a Halloween day, by the way, October 31st. So I promise you there won't be any scary tests, or I won't be dressed up as some Putana or something like that. Rest be assured, I have no desire for any Halloween costume. I'll see you all on 2 weeks from now. Thank you so very much for your association.
कृपा सिंधुभ्यो च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.